Welcome, Betty. I'm so excited to have you on my podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Connie.
Yeah, well, I'm all excited because you and we have some stuff in common. We were both accountants in the corporate world before we do what we do now. No, so tell us a little bit. What was your journey to here?
Yeah, well, if I think way back when to I was a little kid, I've always liked interior design. I've always compared my home to magazines and wonder like, why doesn't my home look like that? So it was always something that fascinated me. And, as I grew up, I sort of took a detour to accounting, in the business school and thought that's what I needed to do as an adult. The entrepreneurial life was an approach that my family took. And I just thought, we're a new generation. We need to go to college and find a corporate job. So that's what I had in mind. So I ran the traditional route. But interior design and being in beautiful spaces was still something that intrigued me. And it wasn't until I found, start living on my own, arranging my own space, that I was like, oh, there's stuff I can do to make this better. Instead of just making it look better, there's feng shui, there's other techniques that I need to learn to really make this space work for me. And that's how I started my way back into just caring about my space and what other modalities I can to make my life better.
Hmm. Yeah, I had a similar path because, like, as a child, I would constantly rearrange my room. Like, I had my own bedroom, but I would constantly rearrange it to see how it feels if the bed is here, and how does it feel when the bed is here, and how can I make things flow better and everything. But yeah, it was not an option to do that as a profession when I was at the age to pick something. So I kind of ended up in finance, and I was good there, but it was not. I mean, yeah, I love numbers, but it's not the all. So I like
Mhm.
much better what I do now. Yeah, so you went ahead and you have your own business now. So you're doing Feng Shui consultations, and I love the name of your business. You call yourself the Feng Shui Canary, no? So can you, for the people who don't know what a canary is, tell us a little bit what it means and how you came up with this name?
Yeah, sure. A few years ago, when blogging was a big deal, my friend and I thought we should do a blog together, and we should co-blog so that the responsibility isn't just on one person. And we were brainstorming names back then, and the word canary came to mind because it's a bird, it's a logo that we could have, and it's just adorable, and it has a nice sound to it. I just really liked it. But it didn't work out for the idea that we had. And also, I love the idea that the canary is there to save you. Coal miners used to bring canaries into the coal mine with them, and if they stop singing, that's their cue to know that the oxygen level is low. They need to, evacuate right away to save their own life. And I really like that symbolic meaning. So I thought, one day I'll incorporate that into a business idea. And when I decided to do feng shui, I sort of just was going to sleep one day and thought, oh my gosh, that's the name. It's a perfect symbolism for what I do as a feng shui consultant, because I'm going to be in people's spaces. I'm going to see what the energy is like, not actually see with my eyes, but with through some analysis. And it was just a perfect match. I was like, I can't give this up.
Yeah, I love it. Although I find it a little like, don't these birds usually die or often die? I mean, it's a little cruel. So yeah,
Yeah.
but
It
yeah,
is a little bit cruel, but hopefully my symbolic canary in the feng shui world will save people instead
Yeah.
of me having to sacrifice myself.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I hope you don't sacrifice yourself. Yeah. So I always was interested very much in Feng Shui. I never like professionally studied it, but I read many books, so I know quite a little bit about it. But in your own words, what are the ways that Feng Shui helps us in our life and business, or how would be a Feng Shui consultation with you benefit somebody in their life and business? What would you say?
Yeah, so I often describe a feng shui consultation as um, helping my clients to see the personality of their home or their commercial space, because the way that I do my work in the classical feng shui approach, it really is about understanding the energy of the space and how that might support you. You know, if you are in different stages of your life, relationship, health, or money, any one of those things could be a priority, or they might all be a priority, right? So it's really about understanding what your priorities are and see how your space will support you. So I like to describe a feng shui consultation as introducing you to the personality of your home. And the way that personality is going to play out is by the different events that will happen to you while you're living there.
Mhm.
So for example, if you are a newlywed and you move into a new home, you know, you're starting this exciting life. So what you're expecting to experience is just, you know, a happy life, continue growth in your career, and, you know, sometime down the road, start a new family, you know, and sort of just carry on that expectation of how your life might plan out. But, you know, as much as you have that in your mind of this is how I will want my life to work out, your house, you know, the energy of your home has a different plan. And so that might show up in some roadblocks. You know, there might be some financial roadblocks or some health roadblocks. And these things come up at different phases because you know, one thing that people don't talk about often about feng shui is that there's a time factor. You know, it's not as simple as you put in a remedy, you know, a crystal or whatever it is in your home and magic will happen. It doesn't work that way. So it really takes time. And that's sort of like, you know, you're playing the long game. And that is something that I emphasize in my work to help my clients understand that and to basically spread the words. You know, I'm talking to you now, hoping that more people will be educated in what feng shui really is, as opposed to, you know, a quick fix to help in a problem that you're facing.
Yeah. Yeah, and people are so focused on quick fixes sometimes. I feel like I notice that a lot when I help people declutter. They just like in one way, they just want me to come in with a magic wand and their problem is gone. And it doesn't work that way because, well, yeah, the problem might be gone temporarily, but it may come back because nothing has changed. And I could imagine that it's a little similar, like different but similar, because like everything that is sustainable or we want to be sustainable needs time and needs a little bit more energy than just waving some kind of a wand. I'm wondering, so sometimes you mentioned already, oh, some people just hang up crystals or other trinkets. I was wondering too, is like you hear sometimes that you have to make sure the house number of the home you're moving into doesn't have whatever it was now, doesn't have these numbers in it or has these numbers in it. Is that also part of the classical feng shui, or is that more like um, I know there's all kinds of different branches, like everybody talks a little bit different about it. Is that something you look into too, or not
Mhm.
so much?
Yeah. So the specific numbers that are inauspicious, so to speak, like the number four in Chinese, phonetically sounds like death. So every
Um,
time you say 444, you mean you're saying die, 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 right?
yeah,
So a lot of the sort of symbolism in the numbers in Chinese are because they phonetically sound like something inauspicious. So that's where that connotation of like bad came from. The number 8 sounds like prosperity. So that's why people love the number 8. Or the number 6 sounds like sort of like a smooth sailing. So, there are different sort of phonetic meanings to these numbers to make them good or bad. But, in reality, if you don't speak Chinese and you will never know the association, right? So you're only told, oh, the number 4 is bad, but you're never told why it's bad. So I don't particularly look at your address number in terms of my review. But, if that is something that you believe in terms of numerology, if there's a different meaning there, by all means, do what makes you feel comfortable. But in terms of what I do in a classical feng shui sense, I don't incorporate the meaning of your number, door number.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, because like where I live here in the Vancouver area, we have a lot of people from China. And I did hear that about, oh, don't have a 4 in your address, but I never really 100% understood why. So thank you for clarifying that. So when I was on your website, I saw you kind of like look more like what direction the home is facing, no? And then you have, you say that tells you the personality of the home. But I also kind of know that there is, from a different interview I did with somebody who does Feng Shui, I know that there is difference between permanent energies and annual energies and monthly energies, and sounds all a little confusing. So when you're looking for a home, I would think you look more for the permanent ones, or are the other ones playing into it as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you for bringing that up. So permanent energy is really important because that's what I was alluding to earlier about the personality of your home, right? So if you're going to live in that space for 10, 20 years, the permanent energy is what will impact you in that 20 years. So if you have been in your space for 10 plus years, you can think back to say, what type of events happened in relation to my health? How has my health been? What about my career? Have I lost a job in between, or have my career just, went up and up, right? Or what about your relationship? And it's not just romantic relationship, it's a relationship with friends and family, how's that going? So with the permanent energy, you'll be able to tell how sort of that trajectory is for those 3 categories. And then the way that it impacts people, like if you're a father versus you're the first son, it affects you differently, because in the analysis, there are different representation for each people in the family, and how that these energies influence them will have a different sort of time frame. So when you are looking for a home, you are completely correct that permanent energy is what you want to focus on. The annual and monthly, as it indicates, it changes every year and every month. So those are more temporary. And so it's not something that you would want to focus on when you're buying something permanent. But if you're going to be in a rental for a year, then most definitely look at the annual energy and see how that will impact you.
And is that then when you look at the, like I understand the permanent one, you look specifically at the house or the rentals, the commercial space. But if you're looking at the annual or the monthly, do you look at the annual and the monthly of the building or the house, or of the person who lives in it?
Oh, gotcha. So the permanent energy is determined by the facing direction of your home, right? So, that typically for most of us will be your street address, right? What direction is that facing? That will help you determine the permanent energy. For annual and monthly, it is the same for everybody. So so you will have, the same energy in the Southwest as your neighbor, as your friend in Australia, everybody will have the same annual and monthly energy.
Okay.
But the difference in how it will play out in your life and in their life is how the annual and monthly energy interacts with your permanent energy that's in that direction.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So good I asked that, because that I was a little confused about that, because I thought, how can a house have an annual and a monthly energy? Yeah, no, awesome. Yeah, and so you touched on it already a little bit with the cures, and or like they are called cures sometimes, or the trinkets. So now, if we find ourselves, because we live already in a house, and now we find Betty, and Betty may tell us or explain to us that our house may not be so favorable for, I don't know, what shall we say, career. So now, can we do something other than moving, or can we put up some, like these cures, like I said, I live here where there's a lot of Chinese. You see that cat with the paw, or you see frogs, and what else is good? Crystals, as you mentioned. So tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about these cures.
Yeah, so I have a love and hate relationship with these cures because, um, well, when I was first introduced back into Feng Shui, the whole anything you Google about Feng Shui, you're bound to come up to see some cures. Like you said, you need a frog in your house, or you might need a Buddha somewhere. So I don't think you need them. And the reason, and that's one of the big reasons where that got me comfortable in starting this business. Because, as an American, I don't feel comfortable recommending you putting a dragon and a Buddha and, a frog into your home, because these are very traditional Asian looking items, and not everybody like it, or and it might not fit into your home. It's very obvious that you either feng shui your home if you have those items in your home, or you attempted to do something to boost your energy. So I've always been very uncomfortable with recommending clients with that to purchase any of those things. But I think the reason why I say you don't need it is because if you examine each of those items closely, they are all made out of one element. So a frog, you typically see that it'll probably be some sort of bronze or metal type object. Or a Buddha will always be a porcelain, or clay, or any sort of like earthy material. And the reason for that is because in Chinese, they have really great symbolism. So, a frog, when they see the frog, they instantly know to like, oh, we got to make money. We got to make money and keep money. And that's how we will grow our wealth. But in the West, you don't associate those symbolism. It's not something you grew up with. It's just something your feng shui consultant or your Asian friend told you to have money. It doesn't give you the same sort of reminder that it will for someone in the East, right? So what I tend to help my clients focus on is know what the element you need, and then you go curate objects in that particular element to decorate your home. So you were asking, do you, if your home has bad career energy, let's say unfavorable for career, what should you do? There are definitely things that you can do in your environment to influence or suppress the bad energy, so that it doesn't have as bad of an influence on you. And what you can do is know what that energy is, and that energy typically is represented by a particular number. So that number will tell you what element it is, what sort of, is it auspicious or inauspicious? And from there, you can go ahead and find the elements that will sort of control it. And, in terms of how big or small the object it is that you need, that is all dependent on the size of your property. If you have a 500 square foot apartment, you don't need, a gigantic metal object, so it's all proportional to the space.
Mhm. It's very interesting. So we don't have to all move all of a sudden. That is
No, I rarely recommend my clients to move because I think that's just a very unrealistic approach. And also, can you imagine if I have a client paying me for a consultation and my recommendation at the very end is you have to move your home? Like
yeah,
it's not really the ideal solution.
yeah, very unsettling. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I did I did some extensive training with someone on decluttering, like learning what the reasons are why people clutter up their home. And she always said that decluttering is almost like the first step before you can even do anything feng shui related in the home. Is that also your opinion, or do you have kind of like a different opinion, or what is your stance on that? Can you feng shui a cluttered up house, let's say like that, or should the people first declutter?
Yeah, great question. And I often get people asking me whether or not I will, declutter their home as part of my service. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
glad that we're on this topic. So in terms of clutter, I think if you have just clutter due to the normal day-to-day living, that's completely fine. And many parents have kids and they have
Mm-hmm.
toys around and they feel very unsettled because it's very messy. I think as long as it doesn't give you undue stress, normal day-to-day clutter is fine. I think it will get to a point where, especially with smaller spaces, I'm in New York, so a lot of people are in smaller, more compact apartments or houses. And so, a little bit of clutter can feel very daunting. So it all depends on the size of your space and what type of clutter you have. But I think all in all, if you are not living like a hoarder where there's clutter stacked up to the ceiling, you don't really have to worry about it. The main concern about clutter is that you create stagnant energy.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a corner where it's just piling on of stuff and you have no clue what kind of rubble is underneath it, then yes, it will definitely impact the energy of your space because you're creating an area that allows for stagnant energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you have a corner where you have neatly put together bookshelves and items that you've curated around the world, it's nice. It doesn't sort of induce stress when you look at it, and it's not, you don't have to rifle through anything to find whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's a different sort of energy, right? So what I like to think of when people refer to clutter is, I think of a corner of your room that's piled with clothing, just dirty laundry. Like if you look at that space, there's really nowhere for the energy to go. It's just going to sit there and it's just going to stew in that pile,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the goal in feng shui is really knowing how to let the energy meander in your home, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to sitting in one spot and just sort of like not move, especially when it's sitting in a spot that is dirty and cluttered. I
Mm-hmm.
hope that answers your question.
Yeah, yeah. I love that you're saying it this way, because like when I help people declutter, they're often worried that they have to become minimalist, because we see on Instagram or in these magazines, we see these beautiful spaces curated to the yin yang, and it's not realistic to live like this on a daily basis. And when you look at feng shui photos, sometimes they're similar. No, they're very minimalistic, all perfect and everything. And so I love that you say that, like, even if you have a lot of things and it's household clutter, like also most likely things that you're using and they're just a little bit messy, then it's okay. but that the energy, the stagnant energy, collects around piles and piles, and possibly basements and attics where we have literally no clue where the stuff is. And this is such a similar approach to it than I have, or because I say I'm not living minimalistic. I'm collecting orchids and teddy bears, but I'm helping people declutter, because it's not necessarily about the amount of stuff, it's what stuff it is. So yeah, totally love your answer. So like I said, there's other opinions on that. So is there other differences how you look at Feng Shui compared to how other people practice Feng Shui or look at Feng Shui? Do you like stand out in some special area? Like me, I'm saying like you don't have to live perfectly or picture perfect or magazine worthy to live a decluttered life. Do you have something that you say that distinguishes me from other people who practice Feng Shui or are Feng Shui professionals? I can't speak today.
Yeah, I think you know, if you see me, if you can see me, I don't look like your typical Feng Shui consultant. You might think of someone, maybe an older gentleman or an older lady who dressed in very traditional Chinese garments, holding a big bagua map, and there's certain characteristics that you associate with a Feng Shui consultant. And I don't look like that. I live that way. I grew up in New York. I am very much an American, but I do speak Chinese and very connected with my roots. And that's how I got into this business. But I think my distinguishing factor and my goal in doing this business is really to debunk a lot of the Western interpretation of what Feng Shui is, because I think in modern days, and especially with, social media being so sort of capture your attention for 5 seconds, everybody is looking for that quick fix, right? What is the one thing I can do in terms of Feng Shui to get more money, or to find my loved one, or to, do X, Y, and Z? And I have people ask me that all the time. And my answer is always like, I can't help you, because that's just not what it is. And so I hope through my work, I can help educate people on what real Feng Shui is and how that can help you in the long run, but it's never going to be a quick fix. And, there are many, many schools of Feng Shui in Asia and in the States. And so I hope to help people, have that clarification of, the different distinctions between the different Feng Shui schools, and find one that actually fits them. I practice the classical flying star Feng Shui. That might not be something that you find interesting, or something you believe in, which is another question I get often. It's like, do I have to believe in what you do for it to work? And I've heard a really interesting saying recently, which is, you don't have to believe in the airplane for it to fly, right? You just have to believe in your ability to do whatever it is that you are looking to achieve. Feng Shui is just an added tool for you to help you get there. So, I think ultimately that's my goal, is to just educate people on what it is, versus, looking at their own Feng Shui map online and sort of feel demoralized because they have a missing corner, or a certain corner that represents their wealth is in their bathroom, or stuff like that. So there's always different approaches to it, and you just have to make sure that you understand what it is that you're looking for.
Yeah, I love that. I love that approach. And especially there is no quick fixes, or we can pretend they are, but there is usually not really. It's like we're it's like putting a Band-Aid on a festering wound, basically, you know. So where could people find you if they're now intrigued? Brag a little bit about where they can find you, and what's your favorite social media platform, for example? What's the name of your website?
Yeah, thank you. You can find me at fengshuicanary.com or on any of the social media platforms. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and a few others at Feng Shui Canary. So on my social media, I put out a lot of feng shui in terms of the form school. So that is one distinction, to help you have a visual of, this is how the floor plan looks like, or this is how a kitchen might look like, that might sort of contradict with a feng shui principle. Mm-hmm. So I try to put out as much of those information as possible. But what I practice is incorporates that knowledge, but it includes a lot more detail and calculation. So it's not something I can depict on social media very easily. So there's that distinction.
Yeah. So more personal. So you, when somebody comes to you and hires you, then it becomes very, very personal to the space they have and to them, compared to the general information you put out. Yeah.
And a lot of it is structural things that you might need a renovation to fix, whereas the stuff that we alluded to earlier about the permanent, annual, and the monthly energy, that is just how the energy shifts, and it doesn't require you to knock down walls and do anything like that to sort of instill a new sort of energy.
Yeah, I love that. So do you have any last words of wisdom or any tips that you want to leave us with before we wrap up?
Last words of wisdom. Well, I think if anyone is interested in navigating this for themselves, especially if someone who's wanting to do this DIY style, which is how I really started out my journey as well. I really encourage you to do your research and understand the different schools and how they came about. Because once you understand that, then you'll know what approach will suit you best. Because there are Western approaches that work for many practitioners, and then there's the Eastern approach. So before you just sort of take all the information on Google and try to implement in your home, try to figure out what school they came from, and then just hone in on one school, because otherwise the information gets very contradictory, it gets very confusing.
That's a great tip. Thank you very much, Betty, for taking the time to be on my podcast, to share your knowledge and your wisdom with us. And I hope, or no, I'm sure people are now a little bit more clear on how Feng Shui can help them in their life and business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Connie. Thank you for this opportunity to talk to your audiences, and to give me this platform to clarify what Feng Shui is.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.